hot out here. It's 81 degrees. Maybe turn it up another notch. I kind of don't want you guys to hear the AC. That's the issue. This girl's rolling a lint roller on her shirt. All right, so, hey, what's up? I'm Izzy. I do a lot of driving over long periods of time, and I don't really listen to music while I drive. So I figured I would just fill the time with me talking to a camera. That sounds like fun, right? So I'm gonna try that out. And I figured the easiest thing to talk about would just be driving. The thing is that I wanted to make a video today about my story driving a car, maybe even a manual car. Maybe we'll talk just about the manual aspect of a car. I have driven a manual car since 2017. So it's only been 3 + 2, 5 years. And before that, I've driven a car since 2013, so it's almost been 10 years of driving. And we're going the wrong way. I gotta go. This is a roundabout. It's kind of awkward. Yeah, I was like gonna go home, but we're actually gonna go to the coffee shop. From a very young age, my mom used to drive me to school in I want to say a 1989 Honda Prelude. And it was the sportier model of it, I think. And she describes it as like the car that was cool back then. So it's comparable to like an Integra, I think, an Acura Integra. Though they're making Integras now, which is now equivalent to a Honda Civic Si. But like in that general, like very entry-level sporty car. She drove that. She drove me, my sister, maybe even my cousin in that car until we were like 14. And that car was a manual car. And I have very fond memories of just sitting in the passenger seat. She'd be driving us to school, and like I would be shifting through the gears as she was driving. I thought that was so cool. And I remember when I was gonna get my like learner's permit to learn how to drive, I didn't learn in that car. I learned it in an automatic, and then I tried to learn in that car, and it was like terrifying. I just could not get the car going. By the time I got the courage back, like someone had smashed that car like on the side of my house and like ran into the side. Like it was just really messed up, and we had to sell it. That car was a very sentimental car for my mom. And what's funny is the way that she remembers how old I am is by remembering when she bought that car and then subtracting like a couple years. So I had a friend, maybe he'll be a reoccurring character. His name was Amos. I thought he was a really cool guy, and we were best friends. And it's always good to see him when he comes in town. But I always thought that, I don't know, he was just so cool. And he drove a manual car. And he was one of the first friends. Actually, I think he was my first friend that got to drive. And he drove everywhere. He drove us everywhere. And I remember he had a manual car. Sometimes it actually wasn't his main car, but regardless, like he would drive it, and I thought it would be so cool. He'd be like checking for the gears to be in neutral. He'd be on a hill. He'd talk to me about like how like why hills are kind of hard. He'd say things like double clutch, which like I don't know why you would do in the modern day, but or like heel toe, like all these, like, you know, when you're in high school, you probably hear all these things. You're like, whoa, that's so cool, and it was cool. And I would watch YouTube videos of how to drive manual cars. I remember there was this YouTuber who like was teaching people how to drive manual, and it was like a Mini Cooper. And I was like, damn, this is so cool. And I would like pretend that I could drive one like in like my mom's automatic. And then transition now into college. At this point, like my friend Amos is gone. He's joined the Marine Corps, so he's off on adventures. This friend, but his name's Darren, he drove a RX-8, and I remember he thought the car was cool. The car is really cool, but like I remember it would break down, or it was broken a lot. But I remember he drove me a couple times in that manual car, and I thought it was like phenomenal as well. And he was also a pretty cool guy. So I was like, man, all these cool guys that I really look up to are driving manual cars. So there's definitely an aspect of, man, I want to be cool. But I thought it was cool since my mom was driving it. All right, so let's see, who else drove a manual car? Say my friend Tyler. He drove like a 1986 like Honda Accord, like maybe even older, like 83. But he was so nice. I remember we went to my high school and he was teaching me how to drive in that car. It was just super nice of him. It was like a really old car, like, and I remember he was like, if it breaks, it's old. And I was really happy that he was able to. And any time that someone gives me an opportunity to drive any car, let it be an automatic or a manual, because I didn't have my own, I was ecstatic, which is the reason why, maybe not in this car, but if it was like my other car, my Civic Si, which is also a manual, I would be like, oh, does anyone want to learn how to drive? Yeah, let's do it. And like if it's like a kid, like I'll be like, do you want to sit in it and play with it? Because like I think that's so cool. I wish people did that for me when I was younger. Anyways, childhood traumas aside. And now my friend Damani, his dad, I think, is a instructor or a tester at the local DMV, so he was like a good driver, and he drove a manual sometimes as well. And Damani is a good friend of mine. He used to drive me everywhere. For him, he would stay really late, and we would just chill and talk about life. And this car is in my lane. Is he honking at me? Yeah, I think they were trying to get in without signaling. It's a nice light beam there. Anyways, so he would drive me a lot, and I remember I told myself, I'm like, man, like when I like get older and maybe get a car, I still got a right turn signal. Maybe that's why he's honking at me. It's because I have the right turn signal on. So, anyways, like I told myself, I'm like, yeah, no, I'd pay him back one day. Like he really did just drive me everywhere. Cool. So now, as for learning the car, you know that like my first foray into it was the Honda Prelude. Next comes in, I go to Thailand to see my grandpa after I graduate college, and he has a manual like Isuzu pickup truck, and I'm like, oh yeah, like this is it, like we have to learn how to drive. So I actually got good at starting the drive in a right-hand side car, so I was shifting with my left hand, which I thought was pretty cool. So I remember I was kind of scared to ask him, but like I remember I was like, like maybe you could teach me, and he's like, all right. So I think we just like in the morning, he's like, right now, and I was like, right now, yeah. Like I was like, I get really scared or anxious when like I'm not good at something and I got to do it like right now. So I'm like, okay, yeah, let's go. So he like drives us out like the other side of his house is like it's not a large field, it's like a field. It's someone's backyard, and he's like, all right, let's do it. So we practiced just driving in circles in the field, and I feel like that was the most Asian thing to do, or like rural thing. The area is not even really rural. It's just someone's backyard. I'm getting it. I'm getting good. And then just like I stayed in Thailand for maybe like 3 weeks or like a month. And I think at that point, every day I would just, whenever he drove us somewhere, I'd be like, hey, like, can I like put it into the garage? So like I would back it into the garage, and I just got really good at being in first gear, which I think is really the only thing you need to know. Like the hardest part about driving a manual is getting into gear, first gear. Everything else is just much easier and builds off of that. So anyways, over the 3 week span, I just got really good at getting into the garage. And then one day I was like, hey, look, I'd really like to try getting into some other gears. And I remember that was, I was actually pretty confident that I would do well. I don't think I did too well. And I think I kind of scared him. I was in now the neighborhood I'm driving, I'm outside, and it's a residential neighborhood. So, but like, it's like the streets are kind of narrow, or at least narrow for someone learning how to drive. And like I was used to driving on the like right-hand side of the road, so I would constantly be on the wrong side of the road, and he would be like grabbing the wheel and be like, yo, you're on the wrong side. And I remember like getting into second gear, and that was like pretty easy, but it was hard because I remember getting into second gear, that was pretty easy, but like I just could not gauge my speed, and as I was going around a corner, and like I wasn't really told how to downshift or if that was even a thing. And I was just like, all right, I guess we're just going to go in this corner at like fourth gear. Really, it was probably third gear. And that was just pretty gnarly. And I remember when I got back to the States, I like started working and I was saving some money, and I've always wanted a Civic Si as my first car. And I had a regular Civic of the same generation 9. And I was just like, I'm just gonna get a white one. I've always wanted it. Maybe that's like a separate story, I could tell. I'm now in the market for a manual car, and I'm so excited. I'm like, yes, I can get in first gear. This is gonna be great. So I go try out all these Civic SIs around Maryland, not knowing how to get into second gear. And I pretty much, through the course of like 2 weeks, just learned how to drive on the road. My friend Mark, my friend Virginta, they both drove SIs. One was an 8th gen, one was a 9th gen, and they let me practice in their car. So then Mark is like, hey, like, I'm actually trying to sell the car. And I'm like, that's perfect. So I buy the car from Mark. That's how I got that Civic Si. And then I just drove that for a while, and I just got really good at driving the car, you know? And then that's obviously not the car I'm in right now. So then afterwards, I bought like a BMW M3. Super proud of that purchase as well. I don't know if you can tell from the smile, but it's also a manual. I even thought actually I was gonna buy a Civic Type R or like a Civic Si, like 10th generation, but the coupe upgrade, because my friend, her name's Angel, she had a white coupe, not a manual, but not an Si either, but it was like pretty cool looking. But manuals are kind of on the way out, right? They've been on the way out, and not many people know how to drive them. I think I like manual cars because not many people know how to drive them, and it's like an effort to drive them. And I know that people don't. Oftentimes when people say why they don't drive a manual, they're like, oh, it's too much work, or more importantly, like during traffic, they don't like to just keep on stopping and going. But because I trained in the garage, like that's like what I like. I like to get the car going. In fact, I don't like driving on the highway because I don't get to change gears as much. So I love driving in neighborhoods. Anyways, I appreciate everyone listening to this video. It's just a random home video. Maybe I'll show it to my grandpa. But that's the story of how I feel about manuals and my journey into manual driving. So thanks for watching. Peace.